Okay, so I just finished watching the Netflix Devil May Cry series, produced by, I really don't want to mispronounce his name, Adi Shankar, who also produced the Castlevania series for Netflix. Um, there's a lot of preamble that I could give. I could talk about how long it's been since it was announced and all the weird stuff that seems to have been happening behind the scenes and all the politics behind why we've got a new voice actor playing Dante, but none of that matters. You're here to know what side of the line I fall on. Do I think that this is the greatest show ever made and an actual gift from the heavens above themselves, or do I think that this show came into my house and physically assaulted me? Let's just get right to it. I think that the show was pretty good. Now, put away your pitchforks and put out your torches, because I'm not saying that this show is by any means a proper adaptation of Devil May Cry, or that it particularly does the source material any justice in comparison to other video game adaptations that I've seen, like the Fallout series, or even the Cuphead show, or even the Mario movie. Not a great example on that last one, but it still respects the source material just a little bit more than this show does. The thing is, if you, like me, have been confused as to when in the timeline this show takes place because of bosses from the games that show up as enemies in this show, or weapons that pop up in the opening sequence, or anything like that, the answer is it doesn't. This does not take place anywhere in the timeline of the video games because this is a separate timeline from the video games. And this isn't something that I typically say when discussing an adaptation of something, but the show truly is best enjoyed if you're not thinking too much about the games. This is a completely different story that centers on characters from the Devil May Cry games and follows certain plot beats from the Devil May Cry games, and a lot of the lore from the Devil May Cry games is present here, but it's very different. That being said, let's talk about characters. Dante, first and foremost, I think is really good here. There's a lot of discussion about him being nerfed. I don't think that that's the case. I think that the version of Dante that we're seeing in this show, if we were going to compare him to the games, is most similar to the way that he is in Devil May Cry 3. He screws around a lot, he doesn't take fights too seriously, he makes a lot of rookie mistakes, which you could say about Devil May Cry 3. I mean, he got shot in the head needlessly when it wasn't required at all. He got stabbed by 8 of those Reaper enemies whose names I can't remember in the opening cutscene. He takes a lot of hits he doesn't need to take because he's not taking it too seriously. He's not too skilled, he's not too experienced yet, right? He's used to being able to steamroll his enemies, and once he starts meeting significant challenge, he starts getting sloppy. This is also a Dante who has not really awakened his Devil Trigger just yet. So there's a lot of elements from the third game that enforce this version of the character. With that in mind, I think he's a lot of fun. I think he's funny, I think he embodies the character in mostly the right ways. And with Johnny Young Bosch voicing the character, it is a little distracting if you are like me and are a longtime fan of the franchise, because when he speaks, he sounds like Nero. That's just what it is. But after a while, you kind of forget about that. By the end of the show, I wasn't thinking about Nero at all, you know? And it helps because I do think that Johnny plays the Dante character quite well. I think he plays it in his own way, he puts his own spin on it, and I think it's a breath of fresh air. On the other side of that token, you have Lady, who goes by the name Mary Arkham in this show. Now, if you've played Devil May Cry 3, you know that's not right. She does not go by the name Mary. She does not like the name Mary. She has trauma attached to that name because of her father. And she does have trauma from her father in this show, but it's different. That's really what a lot of the show boils down to, is it's like the game, but different. And whether or not those changes that are made work for you or are good in general, it's gonna come down to personal preference. I don't really have too much of a problem with too much that was changed other than the lady character. I think that her dialogue is extraordinarily cringy. It's just littered with F words left and right. She talks like Wolverine in the third Deadpool movie. It's insane. I think she might say the F word just as many times as he does, to be completely honest with you. But hey, that's neither here nor there. What is interesting about it is that her writing is similar to Dante from the reboot, and most people don't like Dante from the reboot, and that's a large part of the reason why. There's another thing that makes this show very similar to the reboot, and I'll talk about that right after this brief message. What's up, everybody? I do want to give a brief interruption to this video. Whatever I'm talking about, I'm sure I'm yapping quite enough, but just give me a couple extra minutes of your time real quick. I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, which is me, or more specifically, my Patreon. You see, YouTube has kicked me out of the partnership program again. And what happens when they do that is that they suppress my videos. So not only do I not make any money off of what I'm working so hard on and putting out for you guys to watch, they're also making it harder for you guys to see what I'm actually making. So I have to work twice as hard to get nothing back from YouTube. Now, that's not your guys' fault. I'm not blaming you. I don't even want to make it your responsibility. But you guys seem to like the work that I do here. You guys have given me so much support and told me so many nice, heartwarming things over the years. And so part of me believes that maybe you want to support me more directly. So that's why I've brought the Patreon back. I've reworked the tiers. I've adjusted some of the prices, adjusted some of the rewards. There's a whole new layout. It looks different. There's a loyalty program with a little bit of merch in there. I've revised the merch as well so that you can get it more directly. I'm also looking forward to that aspect because that means I get to work on new designs, new items. There's just stickers and mini prints there for now. I don't want to get into like t-shirts or sweaters or anything like that until I have better designs that I want to work on myself. So that's another thing. Like, having the Patreon back, having you guys support me there will motivate me to make more content, to live stream more, to work on music again, to work on my art again. It'll be a give and take on both of our ends. You'd be helping me out a lot just for being able to do this more, take it more seriously, get out this huge backlog of videos that I recorded, because to be honest, getting kicked out of the partnership program again is really demotivating. It's not the first time it's happened, obviously, but things felt different because it was at the start of the year. It felt like 2025 was going to be a year that really put me back where I used to be, where when it comes to doing YouTube and creating content full time. I was optimistic about doing this again, and that kind of got taken away from me. Again, not your fault. Don't want to make it your fault. Do just kind of want to point you towards where you can see extra stuff and where you can support me directly if you do feel so inclined. No pressure. All right, back to the video. Actually, before I go, I just found out that I can't link things in the description anymore. There are still pinned links on my page so that you can go to my channel and click on the link to my Patreon from there, but you can't just click on the link down in the description. So I do have to ask you to do a little bit more work to go to patreon.com/ToxicTouchProductions, but I promise it will be worth it, and hopefully I'll see you there. Man, I thought he'd never shut up. Now, another way that this show is shockingly similar to the reboot is that it has a very strong political commentary message. It's a through line. It talks about colonialism and nationalism and American greed and all these weird elements that, in my opinion, don't belong in Devil May Cry. I'm not gonna say that you can't have political commentary in your art, because of course you can. I'm a Star Wars fan, for crying out loud, you know? I'm a Harry Potter fan, for crying out loud. However, I think that it's well understood that Devil May Cry is not a proper setting to convey a message like that. The reboot had a lot to say about blind consumerism and like alt-right media and media manipulation and all these weird things that don't really belong in this type of game. And in order to make these types of messages work, you have to change the world that Devil May Cry takes place in. The DMC games usually take place on like a remote island with like gothic, old European architecture. They're in castles and stuff like that. Not in major cities, like heavily populated cities like Manhattan, like this show takes place in. It's just, it's a weird, I won't say betrayal, but it's a weird deviation from what Devil May Cry has always been, in a way that I don't particularly think is too welcome, especially because it's not subtle at all. It's really heavy-handed. It kind of just beats you over the head, like, hey, this is the point we're trying to get across. Do you hear it? Do you see it? Are you understanding it? And I'm like, yeah, I get your point. Will you stop hitting me? Will you stop beating me over the head with it? But none of that is to say that the show is bad. I think that the story being told with these characters is interesting enough. I thought that the villain, White Rabbit, was really cool. I liked his backstory. And to be specific, episode 6 talks a lot about his backstory and Lady's updated new backstory for this show. That's the best episode of the entire season, by far. A lot of people are going to say that. I think even Johnny Young Bosch said that. But that is it's such a powerful episode, and most of it does not have voice acting in it. I think there's just a handful of spoken lines in that entire episode, and it's still phenomenal. Beyond that, though, there is kind of a drawback in them deviating from the source material in order to tell a brand new story, is that they won't really commit to that. There's still elements from the lore that if you know them, then you know what's coming, right? You see a demon that's kind of dressed like a knight who's got like a gray face and red eyes and horns. You know who it is. you already know who it is. It kind of reads like Adi didn't really... if I'm being honest, I don't think he's played the Devil May Cry games. I think maybe he watched someone play the first game, because a lot of the lore that's in this show just comes from like the opening text scroll of that very first game. It's very surface level. It's stuff that people that haven't even played Devil May Cry know about Devil May Cry. I think it's a huge missed opportunity to not explore some of the stuff that longtime fans have been wondering. Is Sparta still alive? Is Mundus really dead? There's a lot of questions out there that people have been wanting answers to for 20 plus years, and this was an opportunity to try to provide those. Not necessarily to say that the show needed to be canon to the games, but that if we're going to tell an original story, let's just try to get a little bit more creative, you know? I do want to say that pretty much every voice performance in this show is top-notch. They're all killer, including the late, great Kevin Conroy. I remember hearing about him being in this show just a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, well, I wonder if I'll be able to pick him out when I hear him. Yeah, it's not hard to pick him out. I will say, though, Kevin Conroy died well over 2 years ago, nearly 2.5 years ago. So the likelihood is that his lines for this show were recorded 3 to 4 years ago. That being said, there was some really rough animation and a lot of really ugly CGI. And I have to wonder, if we were recording dialogue for the show up to 4 years ago, what happened to all the time? Were we not animating? And I don't know anything about animation. I don't know the finer details of how it works, but I do know that the longer you have to animate, the better it usually looks. It's not always about budget, it's more about time management. Usually when you see a lot of CGI in a show like this, it means there wasn't as much time as the animators would have liked. But when Dante's Devil Trigger form is pretty much rendered entirely in CGI, it's a bad omen, because if this show gets a second season, he's probably going to be using that Devil Trigger form a lot more, because he uses it quite a lot. But I don't know, whatever. None of that particularly matters too much. What else is there to talk about? Oh, the music. A lot of people kind of got the feeling that this show was trying to capture the feeling of the early 2000s when the Devil May Cry series first started, because the first game came out in 2001. So it's very much a product of those early 2000s, when there was a lot of rap metal, and rap rock coming out and stuff like that. There was Limp Bizkit and you know, Papa Roach and stuff like that. I don't think that that fits Devil May Cry specifically. I think that Devil May Cry is a franchise that's always had great music because it's had original music that was tailored to the setting and the story being told. Casey Edwards is the best thing that's ever happened to Devil May Cry's music. Obviously, Devil's Never Cry is a great song too, but the work that he did on Devil Trigger and Bury the Light is out of this world. And those songs are in the show, but they're remixed and covered by somebody else, and they don't sound right. They just don't sound right. But I want to say that if we're talking about having licensed music in this show, you have a villain named White Rabbit, and his whole thing is Alice in Wonderland based, and you don't play the song White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane ever? That's a nitpick, I know, that doesn't make the show bad. But it's like, if we're doing licensed music, license that song. Come on. The Matrix used it, but you're too good for it? I don't know. None of that really matters. Point is, Netflix's Devil May Cry anime. Is it good? Is it bad? I think it was alright. I'm not a fan of the concept of separating the adaptation from its source material when you're viewing it, but I mean, I'm also somebody that kind of enjoyed Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. I'm also somebody that kind of enjoyed the 1994 Mortal Kombat movie. I'm also someone who kind of enjoyed the 2021 Mortal Kombat movie. So I'm no stranger to liberties being taken with the source material that make it drastically different from what you're expecting it to be. Sometimes those changes are for the better, sometimes they're for the worse. This show has a lot of both of those. It kind of lives in two worlds. But I think it's pretty, like I've said before, I think it's okay. I think it is okay to pretty good. I'd call it a good show. Not great by any means. It doesn't like blow my mind at any points. But I found myself having a good time watching it, and I think a lot of people will too. Non-Devil May Cry fans who are probably just going to check this out because it looks cool and it's this new Netflix show are going to enjoy the show. That's just, I think that the show is well made enough for your average person to just hop in and have a good time watching it. And longtime Devil May Cry fans are going to be really torn. There's going to be some that like it and some that don't. All I ask is that if you do not like this show, that you don't go into people's comment sections and start replying to their tweets or whatever they post, saying something positive about the show, and go after them for it. I don't want you to attack Johnny Young Bosch or anybody else from the show that tweets something positive about the show. You don't need to start blasting hate at them. It won't do anything, it won't solve anything. Don't blame Johnny for Ruben Langdon not being around anymore. Don't blame the new Virgil voice actor for Dan Southworth not being in the show. None of that is productive, none of that is helpful, okay? But, let me get off my soapbox. The Devil May Cry series on Netflix by Adi Shankar. You like it? Did you hate it? Oh. If people actually see this video, I'm looking forward to seeing what the comments look like. Anyway, that's enough of me yapping. I'll see you later.